Ladies and gentlemen, we found a freak! Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. And no, don't let this 2010s era custom shop case fool you. We're going to the Norlin era. Wait until you see this. It's a natural Les Paul custom. You never see those, right? Oh, it's so beautiful. Great. We've never had one of these on the show before. It's such a weird freak. Maple neck. Oh, no. No. You guys know me. There's something more special about this one. No inlays! That's right. I found a 1976 Gibson Les Paul Custom. Not only does it not have inlays, it's one of the maple fretboard guitars. What a weird anomaly. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a story behind this one. But first, let's do a little bit of a recap of history, just in case it's the first time you've seen a maple fretboard Les Paul Custom. We had just recently documented one of these on the show, but around 1975, yeah, you can find some 74s, when Gibson starts to incorporate the maple neck onto the Les Paul, they also start to offer the option of a maple fretboard. They were never huge sellers. Typically you'll find them in the natural finish as well as the ebony. But the main years that you'll find these things are 1976 through about 79. Now they do exist in 1980 and 81, sometimes you'll find in 82, but then they take a break until about 85, 86, when you start to see them come back a little bit more, and then it's not really until 2011 with the whole Richlight era that they start to toy with it again. However, at that time, they do not lacquer the boards, whereas the vintage ones are. So there we go. I spend 5+ years looking for clean blonde beauties, and just like that, back to back, I find a freak and a relatively clean one. But what's really cool about one of these not having inlays is what I was just telling you. These are lacquered fretboards. And due to that, even on the cleanest examples, you still have lacquer shrink around your inlays, and they just end up not looking that nice over time when you really get up in their face. As far as which one looks better, I guess I'll leave that up to you. But now I'm sure you're curious, what is the story behind this one? I don't exactly know. I don't think anybody has the full detailed history on this particular one, but I have two really good theories. One of them, we need to look onto the backside of the headstock. We've got our decal serial number, but you're gonna notice 3 little letters down here, BGN. That stands for bargain. So in Gibson history, in the 70s, there's factory seconds and then there's bargains. Seconds usually have some sort of a small cosmetic blemish. The bargains typically had something a little bit more major wrong with them. So it could be somebody forgot to put the inlays on the guitar and they lacquered over the board and it's already finished before we noticed. And yeah, now we need to sell this thing cheap. That's one theory, but in my opinion, I think this was a factory employee's guitar. They stamped at that to get it cheaper, and they built it personally without the inlays. That seems to make more sense to me, because now that I have it in person, it could have also just been, they said, hey, this maple board actually has some mild flame figuring in it. Why don't we just leave it without inlays? And then the employee wants to buy it. That's the story I think is most logical here, but I've been told there's something in the case we might need to check out, because you'll notice our pickguard and stuff is missing. And we'll get into the story of how I found this in a minute, but I've been told there's special parts in here. We've got our switch tip, and then we have rosewood parts. Now this is my first time seeing these. I did not get photos from the shop of these before I bought it, because they brought it up that when it came to us, it had these rosewood parts on it, and we took it off. I was really hoping a factory employee spec'd it out with the Les Paul parts. Unfortunately, no, this is somebody's homemade pickguard, but it is still kind of cool. The backplate says Custom 76, and they had also made a different backplate for it there. So cool, but unfortunately not what I was hoping for. I guess it doesn't look that bad, but I feel like you'd have to wooden out the pickup rings and switch tip and poker chip and all that other stuff. But from the side profile shot, I guess it does kind of work. Because another theory was maybe the guy ordered it this way because he wanted to put his own inlays in. I wish I could take you further on the detailed history of this one, but that's as far as we can really go outside of what the shop told me. But this one is a 1976, appears to have been Nashville built, because we do not have the bone nut like on the other one we had just documented. So hey, that's cool. It's a little bit different, but it's still one of the early pancake body ones. So now the story of this one. I cannot take credit for finding this. It was a little shop called Music. They had a gentleman come into the store with this guitar, and he didn't really know the history or anything about it, but they filled him in and said, hey, that's actually actually quite rare. No inlays, maple fretboard, that thing is a freak. And he didn't know. I think they had said he was like a jazz musician or something. He's just been playing it. I mean, condition-wise, you've got some wear onto the gold. You can feel that the lacquer's a little bit worn in certain areas of the neck. But I'd say by far the worst thing condition-wise on this one's a giant gouge right there. Ran into a cymbal or something. And you've got some minor lacquer wear marks on your fretboard. But apparently he and the shop came to terms where they got it. And it just kind of sat around in their store. But on May 11th, I get a text from my brother in weird guitars bound by the sacred ties of the Les Paul stereo, Pat. One of his buddies had texted him saying, hey, look, a freak. No inlay fretboard. This is right up your alley. Then obviously Pat wants to talk to me about it. So at first I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. You going for it, man? He's not sure. So we hop on a phone call. And then after deliberating on it, we decided, you know, it's an all right deal. I think you should get it, Pat. It was yours first. You go ahead. I don't want to step on any toes here. But he wanted to make sure either he or I got it. But I followed up again with him next Wednesday to see if he got it. He decided no, he doesn't need another trophy piece in his collection. So I said, Pat, do you mind if I do? So he's officially passed on it, and I decide it's a little bit more than I really want to spend, but it needs to be documented. So even if I don't end up keeping this thing forever, which honestly, at this point in time, it's too cool and weird of an anomaly to let released again, because it's just interesting as far as the museum aspect goes. Because if it wasn't for that ultimate goal of mine, I'd be in the same boat as Pat. I don't need another guitar in my collection, but knowing that people will be able to see this and appreciate it one day, that's good. That's the only reason I do what I do. So thank you, Pat, and Pat's friend. But now let's see. Are there any secrets hidden within? Because I have not seen the cavity routes. There might be the answer in the neck pickup cavity or the bridge or etched into the edge over here. Let's head on over there now. You know things get intense when I take the knobs off. Okay, so let's just go ahead and dive into this together. First off, I didn't think this guitar was that dirty when I unboxed it, but I just kept getting layers and layers and layers of gunk, so somebody loved playing this thing, but they took exceptionally good care of it. So I did the best I could. It's definitely a lot cleaner now. Now let's check out our pickups and routes. So our neck pickup looks like an error-correct T-top, like right before they're doing the date stamps, or it's possible it wore off, but it looks like somebody has played with the covers at some point in time. That's not factory solder work. Now our bridge pickup, it's looking the exact same, and again, looks like somebody played with the covers at some point in time. So not a big deal. We've got error-correct T-tops. But now let's take a look at our cavities. So it's a short neck tenon. We're all done with the transitional neck stuff, and we don't really have any pertinent markings in here, except for right here it says 25. If you remember correctly, we saw that on the 25th anniversary Les Pauls. So that's a familiar marking. And most importantly, look how the lacquer's done. You've got bare wood and then just a bit of lacquer there. Had this been refinished at one point in time, usually people don't go through the trouble of masking things off. And our bridge pickup cavity also looks correct to me. But here's a good cross section of our maple top, our small pancake layer of maple before we get our mahogany body. And then we come to the side, you can see another layer of maple before you get to another layer of mahogany. I'm going to keep saying it till everybody knows it. There are 2 pancake layers on pancake guitars. And around 76, 77, the visible one starts to transition away, but this hidden one lingers on a lot longer. So unfortunately, no answers here. But while we're here, we can grab our pickup readings, 7.53 k ohms in the bridge position, 7.63 in the neck, and the middle just for fun, 3.79. Very traditional. And now let's talk about a bridge and tailpiece. So we can see at some point in time, somebody's kind of gashed the top with some sort of a setup tool. Could that be a reason why it was marked a bargain? Maybe, but most likely outside of the factory on those. But after cleaning the bridge up, we can easily tell it's an original one due to our Made in Germany stamp. Schaller was making Gibson stuff at this point in time. As far as our tailpiece, it's seen better days for sure, but it is also an original style one, full weight. But I was curious if this is what made it a bargain. It looks like they might have made the routes just a little bit too big around each of the stop bar studs. But you know what? Now that I look at it, somebody might have just replaced them and they're a little bit taller than usual. Or perhaps those routes didn't go deep enough and they didn't want to be bothered to fix it. It's a possibility. It's also possible somebody just messed with it at some point. But as we run the light along it, you can see it's got nicks and dings. It's players. It's not necessarily collector's condition, but when it comes to weird, freaky anomaly guitars, beggars can't be choosers. But in my opinion, I think the reason this one is a bargain actually comes down here. When I unboxed this, I thought I saw water damage down here. It's got the indicative marks of finish checking, and you can see how the finish is just a little bit lighter in color in these areas. it looks like it's delaminating a little bit. So usually a water damaged guitar is going to look like crap on the bottom. But oddly enough, this one's perfectly fine. Usually you would have the same delamination down here, lots of chipping finish. It's really easy to tell a flood survivor guitar. So I think that is what made this a bargain model. They had some finished delamination because there is a contamination or something. Now thankfully, I just polished this. I messed with it. It does not seem to be brittle. It's just part of its past. Now that's not as noticeable nowadays, but I bet when this thing was brand new and still a clear natural color, it was probably a bit more of an eyesore then. Now is it also possible somebody's sweat or something got in there? I guess, but I've never seen that before. So I'd be willing to bet this was extreme enough of a cosmetic issue to get stamped bargain, because they don't sell necks that are like twisted and warped. They would still throw those away, chop them up, burn them, whatever they did. So you don't have to be scared of seconds and bargains on the vintage market. Usually the worst thing about them now is the stamp itself. But we do have a 3-piece top. You've got one seam running all the way up here, then a really big wide one with tons of wood grain before you get to your third one over here. And you can see where a pickguard was installed at one point in time. Now being a 76, we would probably have the reflector knobs on this, but this one has aged speed knobs. These look exactly like what Gibson was using at this point in time, but personally I doubt that they were the original set to this one. It's kind of like our other Blonde Beauty we just documented. The store guy told him, hey, these new knobs are coming out, they're way better, you should try them. But this is exciting to me. I think this backs up that this was a factory employee's guitar, because look, we've got this weird defect in the plastic. I have never seen that before, so maybe he just got a spare set that wasn't perfect and threw it on his guitar, because everything looks good. I've never seen a factory reject one of these from the 70s. Kind of an interesting swirl. But now we can move on from our 3-piece maple top, mahogany body. We've got the maple neck with the maple fretboard. I thought the frets were good when they came out of the box, but now that I cleaned up the fretboard, because there's just so much gunk on that too, the shine on the frets got even better. Now you can see it's been played. It was more so a rhythm player, so that definitely works for a jazz guitarist, because you don't really see any wear past the 12th fret. It's all in your chording areas and voicings and all that other good stuff, especially with your wear marks here. It's nice to have one of these in my collection that I can show people. This is what I hate on maple fretboarded guitars, when looking for a clean example. Otherwise, maple boards with this kind of wear actually start to look really cool the more you get. But the process of polishing this one up definitely helped bring out some of the flame maple figuring. I wouldn't necessarily advertise it as a flamed board, it just happens to have some flame figuring. I would say the most unique area is right here. You've kind of got a bird's eye like pattern. But for our nut width, I measured 1.7 inches, and that increases to 2.04 at the 12th. And our first fret neck depth is 0.82, and then by the 12th, it increases to 0.96, which might sound big, but you gotta remember, you're starting to hit the heel. It's probably more apropos to take it around the 10th, but I would still classify it as a 60C neck profile. But it looks like a 12-inch fretboard radius with our typical 24 3/4 inch scale, so no funny business in that department. Here's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. The first fretting area is so narrow and skinny feeling, but it is still a C shape. But once you hit about the 5th fret, that's when it starts to widen up a bit more. You can see that represented here. So it goes rather narrow and then widens up. Now for 76, you can just look at the nut to tell if it's Kalamazoo or Nashville built. If it's bone, it's definitely Kalamazoo. The easiest way to tell is look for those little dots. If it's just a solid white material that doesn't have the dots, that's how you know it's the man-made stuff. Then you can also look at your side markers. If you shine a light on them and they have a red glint, that means it's the tortoiseshell-like material, and this one does not have that. But another easy way to tell, Nashville typically has the close spaced 2 dots, whereas KZ has them way farther apart. So far, do I think this is original? I was unsure when we were first talking about it, but now that I have it in hand, it feels right, but I can't say for sure yet until we do a blacklight test, because it's also possible somebody got a deal on a bargain and they're like, hey, I've always wanted a maple fretboard on here. I'm not going to buy a new one because it's too expensive, but I've got a buddy who could just throw a maple board on this damaged cheap one. But in my opinion, this looks like Gibson factory quality work. You can actually see many of the fret nibs have chipped off in a similar fashion to how I usually see that occur. So far, I am willing to believe this left the factory like this. But over here you have a lot of chipped fret nibs. We'll have to see what the blacklight shows. I was really worried about buying this one because of all the chipped nibs. I thought it'd be uncomfortable, but it feels like somebody might have lightly sanded them. You honestly don't even notice it, even when you run your finger along the board like this. But now we can move on to our beautiful headstock. It honestly has not aged that much. Some, yes, but not as heavily ambered as some of them have been. But our truss rod looks fantastic. Here's a look at our cover, heavily aged on the back. And we've got stand rash on both sides. Just the Melcher lacquer kind, not the discolor it crazily kind. But now we gotta move on to the back side. This is a gorgeous mahogany back. Great wood grain. It's got that characteristic yellowish grain fill that you just learn to love on these, even though it looks way different than what they're doing yet today. But here's our toggle switch cavity. You can see the maple layer in your body right there, but everything looks fine. Another reason sometimes things will be a second or a bargain is they over-route something and they have to use an adapter to fix it. This one almost looks like that might be one of those, but I could be wrong on that. But now our last resort. Typically, I don't take pots out unless I can't find any answers anywhere else. But everything dates to 76 here. Looks like the 17th week. I did notice a few interesting things though. We actually have a ground wire on this one, so that was likely added at some point in time. But sometimes they did them up anyway. And occasionally you do see them wired up like this. Instead of attached to the grounding of the pot, they ground them all together and then they use that. And then they just attach the pickup to where they're supposed to go. It is possible somebody tried different pickups and they decide to add that and then do that. I can't really speak on that, but I have seen a few different things of that over the years. But if you can't get answers anywhere else, this is your last hope. And I was hoping to see like for Bob, August 18th, 1978. But no, we just have typical sign-offs. We've got an A, we've got a July date, we've got an August date, pretty much all 1976, another July over there, a couple of 5s. But that's the backside of your maple cap that you're seeing there. Unfortunately, this will remain a mystery unless this video happens to find the original owner or somebody who knew him and the rest of the tale of this one. But we've got our thick binding in the cutaway, and you can see that big gouge I was talking about earlier. That looks way worse than it actually is. It's relatively shallow, but does go all the way through to the wood. But just some nice wood grain. I could see why somebody thought those rosewood parts would have looked good. But hey, look at that. Somebody's put a metal output jack plate on it. Possible that's a replacement. Somebody's also upgraded to slightly larger strap buttons at some point. Not a big deal, but worth knowing. But so far, I think the whole jazz musician thing really does hold true. Because look right here. Do you see how the binding has browned over? Some people's sweat makes that occur. Because everybody has a different level of acidity in it. But I could see, sitting down long term, just having it rest against you. It makes sense. The back was absolutely filthy on this thing, but now it's doing good. All things considered, not too beat up. Like, it's got some worming from like shirt buttons and stuff, but not like a giant belt buckle or anything. This one has a really cool, mysterious tale to it. It's funny how guitars, even though they can't talk, you can kind of understand the type of player that had it just by looking. But we've got a 3-piece maple neck, which is common for 1976. Thankfully, the cleaning and polish job made this feel less like a satin finish and more closer to where it was. But we'll have to see under blacklight if somebody had to touch it up or respray it or something. I'm hoping not. There's another look at our stand rash. But here's my thing. If someone was actually going to refinish the neck to put a new fretboard on it, they probably would have sanded down the BGN stamping and just made it look good. And it's one of the decal era serials. So 00 means 1976 produced. And those are oval shaped decals. You can just barely see the outline of it there. Getting a replacement one of those, very unlikely, unless you have connections. But at that point, if you're that connected, you can almost consider it factory original. I mean, sometimes factory guys, they did play around after hours or at home. But I'm going to go ahead and get this put back together, and I will meet you over there at the blacklight test. Now, the moment of truth, the blacklight test. Everything looks good on the face of the body, but if I would have happened to have missed that area on the front, this shows it a little bit more clearly. You definitely have a different color of something going on there. It's not a different enough of a color to make me think that it was touched up, but there's definitely like some sort of a light lifting or something going on there. But again, appears to be stable now. As far as the fretboard itself, everything looks nice here. But again, you can see those areas where it's been worn through. The headstock is looking peachy. Moving on to the back, everything looks really good here as well. Along the edge, doesn't look like anybody's like taking the neck off and put a brand new one on either. Besides our nicks and dings, I don't see any separation to our pancake body. It's actually looking really good. But the moment of truth comes down to the neck. So in person, I'm not sure if you guys can see this. It is a little bit less glowing in these areas, but you gotta remember, I can feel that the clear coat has been worn down by play a little bit. that's not all that uncommon, and it will affect how much it glows. This looks correct to me from what I can see. You can see there's like a little gash on the neck too, but what I was looking for was like obvious touch-up area along here, like if somebody had to put a new fretboard on it and had to redo the binding or something. And I'm not seeing any of that. The other side is also looking clean. So I do in fact believe this is the original fretboard it left the factory with. But unfortunately, there is something wrong with this guitar. I was double checking the setup, and not that you'll be able to see, but there was just like a little bit too much relief in the neck for my tastes. So I go to adjust our great looking truss rod, and the thing doesn't move. In fact, when you would turn it with the wrench, the rod would move the wrench back into starting position. So I broke out the Big Daddy StewMac wrench, but it just doesn't really seem to want to move and actually do anything. So I'm a little bit conflicted on this one because I'm pretty confident this is factory. Now you could make the argument, you know, somebody changed the fretboard, did a really good job, and then they glued up your truss rod accidentally. I'm not necessarily an expert when it comes to diagnosing truss rods and stuff like that. So I reached out to the master, Dan Erlewine. I sent this guitar down to him, hoping and praying that there would be a simple fix. But unfortunately, he was able to confirm the truss rod is straight up busted in this guitar. Which really stinks, because I was so excited to have this thing in my collection. I'm devastated, and unfortunately I couldn't work a deal with the shop, so it's just being returned to them. But at the end of the day, I don't really need a guitar with a busted truss rod that could be inoperable in just a few years for a $6,000 price tag. But hey, one good thing did come of this. I talked to Dan, and we're doing a project together. So hopefully we'll see that towards the end of this year. So almost free and clear out of the doghouse, but nope, there's always got to be an issue somewhere. How much does this one weigh? It is 10.5 pounds. I'm kind of surprised by that because it feels about 1.5 pounds lighter than my other blonde beauty. So I thought for sure this would be like a 9.5er, but whatever. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how she sounds. You know, at first I really wasn't sure if I liked the whole non-inlay thing, but it definitely grows on you. I think it's mainly because the mother of pearl blocks always kind of look strange on these things anyway. So there we go. In my opinion, I do believe this to be a factory original maple fretboard Les Paul custom that left without any inlays at all. Why that happened, we don't exactly know, but I've already told you my best guesses onto that. So unfortunately, the truss rod is confirmed busted, and the only way Dan could fix this is slicing a hole in our fretboard to see if he could fix it at the anchoring of the rod, or he would have to rip the fretboard off, put a whole new one in if that didn't work. And at that point, the reason why I wouldn't want to fix this is there'd be no way to prove then that it's the factory original maple fretboard with no inlays. So it's just kind of a weird Sophie's Choice situation. If I was going to keep this guitar, I would just leave it as is, enjoy it for while it does play, and then retire it as a museum piece. But unfortunately, this one is going back to the store because they didn't want to sell me a broken guitar. And I didn't want to pay $6,000 for one with a busted truss rod. I'd be happy keeping that like $2,000. Okay, at that point, it's a trophy piece. But now I would love to find the inverse of this, a black Les Paul custom without any inlays from 76. That would be cool, because who knows? Maybe this was just a small limited edition batch run for a small shop that they only ever made like 10 of, and this is the first one to surface. So the other side of the coin is, if you also have an unmarkered fretboard one, please let me know. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.